Hi, Muchísimo Eugene, and welcome to another video from Exit Strategy. Please like, subscribe, share the video if you found it helpful. Give it a thumbs up and pass it on if you believe someone else would benefit from it. I would truly appreciate that. Well, it's good to be back in front of the camera because I have some exciting things to share with you guys by way of solitude, shadow integration, and just spending that time that's much needed as an awakening path who's steadfastly healing. Where I am now is not where I'm going to be, and where I was is not where I'm at. And I think you're going to get there too. And some of you all are far ahead in your journey know this, and you all have just started the journey. You will discover that as well. But I will tell you this, the shadow integration for me, just basically not to overthink it. It is just you going into a place within yourself in silence, in solidarity, in isolation, and you're dealing with a lot of things that are inside of you that for one reason or another you've been going through life not addressing. You're dealing with the whole you, and that whole you is not just talking about you was this decent person that this narcissist came into your life and took you for granted and you didn't deserve it and this, that, and the other. You don't focus or fixate on that aspect only of your life. You go into areas of your life from way back when, since your early beginnings, as far back as your mind will let you go. As you're doing this isolation, you just start to ponder and think about things that had a lot to do with what made you the person you are today, what made you think the way you do, what makes you react the way you do. And that all includes dealing with that shadow, because what you're finding out is there are some things that were impressed upon you by namely your family, mother or father, or some significant person in your family that was an adult that impressed upon you that a lot of the things that you did that were frowned upon, those are the very things that all of us have within us somewhere. And these are the dark areas of our life which we rather not deal with and confront on a serious, consistent basis. And that's all the shadow work is. And what that does for you, it makes you realize and you come to a conclusion that this is not for form or fashion. My life is not a performance. My life is not, to be dictated by other people. My life is not to be lived in shame about some of the things that I did and failed or didn't succeed. I don't want to say failed, but didn't succeed or didn't accomplish the desired result. Your inadequacies, your inferiorities, and all the things that a lot of us mask, and we substitute it with our strengths, never dealing with those weak areas or those areas in our life that make us vulnerable. And you may say your confidence is as good as it could be. Well, I'm here to tell you, you will realize that it has little to do about your confidence. It has more to do with just your awareness of who you are. And the more aware you are, the less confidence has anything to do with it. You begin to live in the present moment. You begin to not become fixated on the things that didn't work out the way that you wanted them to. You use those things instead to propel you towards living a better, more wholesome life. And that's it in a nutshell. And there's so much more I could speak about that. But I just want to get into this video and talk to you guys about how I believe things are not only bad for the narcissist, but they're bordering on, things are at the present moment are bordering on a second wave of exposure of a narcissist or of the narcissist. And I'm talking about a second wave, something unlike the pandemic did. This will pale. The pandemic will pale in comparison to this second wave of exposure of the narcissist. Because if you remember correctly, when the country, as a result of pandemic, and I think the pandemic did more for the empath than it did for the narcissist, just as much as this second wave of exposure is going to do, or even more so. As we know, we're in a financial crisis, whatever you want to call it. It is something that has happened before, and it's going to continue to happen when man start dealing with other people's lives, and the greed and the enviousness and the jealousy and the fight to be first. This is just the way the cookie crumbles. But empaths, we were resilient before, but awakened, game over. Because we're what we're doing right now, we're in the lab of sorts. We've already gone through this first wave of exposure because of what the pandemic did for the empath. It caused us to pump our brakes, because the advantage the narcissist had when we were pre-pandemic was that everyone was going about their business, the hustle and bustle of life, the matrix, the rat race. What happened when the pandemic arrived? It came to its full potential. The country shut down. The world shut down. When I say the country, the world. And what did that do? As a result, it caused not only people to have to pump their brakes, it caused us, and I've said this before, and I really want to nail this home, because think about it wherever you're sitting and listening to this video. You may think you're in a bad spot, but if you're not connected with that narcissist, and you still may going through some trial and errors with the narcissist by a way of litigation, divorce, whatever, but if you're not in the same physical space as that narcissist right now, count that as a blessing, a small blessing, but bigger blessings are on the way. That pandemic and the shutdown of the world, it caused us to not only not be able to go and come as we did before, and to do all the things that we thought we needed to do to make ends meet, to make things go around. It also caused us to pay closer attention to the people in our immediate circle. And those people in our immediate circle were family, not friends. They were family. They were roommates. They were neighbors. They were people who we saw on a consistent basis, who we resided with or we were in close proximity with. Unlike coworkers, see, when you leave a job and go home, you only know those coworkers through the job. And it was the same with the family. You only knew them as much as you cohabitated with them and did little things with them. Pretty much like the coworker, but the difference was you knew a lot more intimate things about friends, loved ones, and siblings. And so what this further did, it caused us to see an inconsistent pattern in these very people that we thought we knew. And excuse me, guys, something fell. But that inconsistent pattern caused us to pay attention to things that didn't line up. And you know how this ended, right, guys? It inevitably, and also, let me emphasize this, it caused the narcissists, who we now know were narcissists, be it friends, family, loved ones, whoever who lived in close proximity, it caused them to react and act very, very different than they normally would have. Whereas when it was going and coming, they were able to manipulate us for months, years, and decades to the point where we thought we knew who they were. But this country shutting down and they could not move around like you and I, in fact, couldn't, we didn't respond or react the same way. Our liberties were taken away from us to a strong degree, but we were resilient and we had a way that we were able to, the word I want to use is we improvised. We improvised in ways that were not as much contentious and divisive as the people who we thought we knew. Namely, now we know the narcissist. And some of this behavior was so strenuous on us mentally, but it was worse for the narcissist because they could not get away from the person or persons who they claimed to love and care about. And they became infuriated in ways that could not be explained. They would go off and have mood swings when there were no problems to be seen. All of this erratic behavior, and this may not have happened verbatim, all of these things that I'm pointing out to everyone, but I'm only pointing out all of these situations because in some way, shape, or form, one or the other or multiple of these things happen to you. And so looking back at that, this pandemic caused you to slow down, and it caused a narcissist to have to pump their brakes. But a narcissist can't spend time with themselves, and you know this. So look at it from that perspective, and you'll see where that whole thing made sense. And that was by the divine hand of God. As much as we know there were some tragedies, loss of lives as a result of the pandemic, it was bigger than the pandemic, in my opinion. Just like it was bigger than the plagues that befell, what was his name in the Old Testament? Herod, I believe his name was. That, when Moses asked him to let God's people go. See, God is not a God of slavery. And that's pretty much what a narcissist sees in you. When they search you out and they discover you, they're looking at you for one reason only. They're looking for you to be their servant. And ultimately destroy. But I don't think they have destroying you on their mind. The destroying part comes when they realize, even as their servant, you're serving with grace. You're not put off to do things for them. They get irritated because you become such a good servant, doing everything you need to do, much like King Saul got bent out of shape because King David was such a good servant. He served him to the bitter end. And because he was such a graceful servant, and the spirit of Saul was so vexed. This is what's happening with narcissists. Their spirit is so vexed. It is so vexed. And that's the only way to see this. The psychopathy is one thing. We talk about that. We're not going to take much away from that being a way that we have to construct this and make it understandable and digestible for people in general. But beyond the generalization of the psychopathy, we must understand that this is a demonic, spiritual, vexed, reprobate mind individuals. Their mind is reprobate. That means they have no They have no, not so much they don't have any way to reconnect with God. It is that they don't have an interest. They wouldn't know what to do because of the pride factor. They wouldn't know how to humble themselves because in the first thing you have to do is humble yourself. Humility has to be the ticket to get in the door, to be heard by God or from God. And so we have that benefit, luxury. We have that gift in the fortunate privilege to be able to do that. And so being in that isolation and dealing with your shadow, the darker parts of you, the parts that are not as adequate as you want them to be, and then finding out that it isn't even about you needing validation. It's not about, see, people in your life set you up to believe that you needed a validated life to a strong degree. You know, as a human being, we shouldn't live for the approval of people, but being a human being, when you do a thing as a child and you see your parents approve of it and they delight in it, that's just something within the human nature that wants to continue to do a thing into a point where you want to continue to have your parents or loved ones or friends delight in the thing that you do. But when you become at one with yourself as an adult and you understand as an individual, win, lose, or draw, you must be okay with yourself. And so this second wave I'm talking to you guys about of exposure with the economic situations, and as a result of all of the shadow integration and awakening of us in power, less is best for us as it stands. Even before this inflation, we were working on substance of self, notwithstanding what we have monetarily, superficially. We are thankful and grateful to have our sanity, our lives, and our health. Those are three things. If you can consistently work on those things, it doesn't really wholeheartedly matter how much money you have in your pocket, in your bank account. If you have the needed necessities or the required necessities to sustain life, not livelihood, life, meaning food, drink, food, water, and whatever medications you may, however, need for quality of life. Quality of life, I emphasize. Not your recreational stuff just so you can feel, a little lightheaded every now and again. That's like a luxury. And I don't frown upon anybody who does anything that they do, but I'm here to tell you, Empaths Awaken, we do best with less. We've came, we've seen, we've done, and we understand, like King Solomon, all of these things are but a vapor. See, you have a royal mindset. You have a way of thinking about things, no matter how bad they are. God innately blessed you with a way to think your way out of a situation. See, narcissists try to think their way around the situation. It is something beautiful about going through something. Because going through it, you often pay attention the whole way through. And so when you come upon a situation such as something you've already gone through, this is a familiar thing to you, as opposed to a person who went around it. They don't know what it truly meant to be in it and go through it. Now, I'm not here to say It is things that we've gone through. It was fun when we went through it, but you look back at it and you say, wow, this was a reason for that. Didn't make sense then, but now it does. And you're able to give off something that you possess, which is an experience through this journey called life. And that's what we're all here to do, share and give off what we possess. And you can only give what you possess. If you don't possess something, you can't give anything. And whatever you do possess, that's the only thing you can give off as well. And so wherever God is adding to your life by way of going into the shadow integration, the shadow work of self, it helps you in a humble way understand that the same things that you need to have grace with yourself about, once you've discovered these things that we kind of hid from ourselves, and it was hid from us. Many things you're made to be shamed about, feel inadequate about, and you realize that at the end of the day, we all have those very same things. So who is anyone to tell you and dictate how you should feel about the things that you've already become comfortable in accepting? Because that part of you that was tried to be kept away from you, you now realize that that's a part of what makes you whole. Before you knew this, you was not whole. You didn't know the whole self. Because every time you might have thought subconsciously about these things that were in the shadow, you automatically desert them because they were things that should have been worked on. And in contrast to that, a narcissist is running away from their shadow. They're running away from their shadow, as opposed to empath. It was forced upon us to suppress it, because now you know yourself as an empath. We are truth tellers. You know, you would probably often tell something when you were young and they would say, no, don't talk about that. No, they don't need to know all of that. Our time it was envious. It was jealous. See, it was a lot of things. And if you excelled in something when you were young, you had probably a portion of people saw the good in you and they were cheerleading for you. But then you probably had that other portion of family members that were trying to cause you to water it down. But when you go through this shadow integration, you come out on the other side of it, because it's a lifetime journey of shadow work and integrating. But once you do the initial understanding, the initial shadow work, you have a general understanding of, now going forth, I don't have to live my life under the umbrella of what anyone thinks about me, because I know myself better than anyone knows me. And once you know yourself, you're able to walk in that truth, walk in self, and you can be present right in the moment. And you can accept the fact that whether a person accepts you or rejects you, it does not change. It does not define you as that self, because you have very strong self-awareness. And when you have a strong self-awareness of yourself, as a result of that shadow work, there is nothing a narcissist can do with you but shiver. Because in the next video, I'll be talking to you about things like the gaze. And we'll be talking about the lone impulse. The lone impulse and how they are feared by a narcissist. That being said, bless.